We'll explore the creation of humanity in 3 steps. First, we'll summarize the biblical accounts of creation. Second, we'll consider the historicity of Adam and Eve. And third, we'll look at their superiority among God's creatures. Let's look first at the biblical accounts. The book of Genesis contains 2 accounts of creation. One is in Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 through chapter 2 verse 3, and the other is in Genesis chapter 2 verses 4 through 25. Together, these accounts give us a general picture of how and why God created us.
The creation accounts of Genesis 1 and 2, I think, are really complements to each other in that they look at the same reality. They look at the first human culture that is made by God, and which the only occupants at this time are 2 human beings. It looks at their culture from 2 different aspects. Really, we have the creation narrative of chapter 1, and it speaks about the whole process, but we have kind of a window into day 6 of the creation of human life in chapter 2, beginning in chapter 2. And it's really going to talk more about their relationship to one another. And so we're getting a kind of a different film shot of the same picture in both of those. And we need to be able to read that and not look for contradiction necessarily, but I think we're seeing really complement and enrichment happening.
In the first creation account, in Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, we're told that the creation was originally formless and empty. Then, in the rest of the chapter, we're told that God spent 6 days forming and filling the universe. During the first 3 days, he dealt with the fact that it was formless by giving shape to its various realms. On the first day, he separated the dark from the light. On the second day, he formed the sky and atmosphere to separate the waters above from the waters below. On the third day, he separated the dry land from the seas. During the next 3 days, he dealt with the fact that creation was empty. On the fourth day, he filled the light and the darkness with heavenly bodies, like the sun and stars. On the fifth day, he put birds in the sky and sea creatures in the oceans. On the sixth day, he filled the dry land with all sorts of animals. And he created human beings to rule over the entire creation on his behalf. As we read in Genesis chapter 1 verses 27 and 28, God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every living creature that moves on the ground." At this point in the biblical account, humanity was clearly distinguished from the rest of creation. Human beings were created in God's image and given authority over his other creatures. We'll talk about this in more depth later. So for now, we simply want to point out that not only was humanity part of creation, it was also its pinnacle. The second creation account, in Genesis chapter 2, verses 4 through 25, contains more details related to God's work on the sixth day, when he created the land animals and humanity. Here, we're told that God formed the animals by molding them from the dust of the earth. And he made the first man, Adam, in largely the same way, also molding his body from the dust of the earth. But it's interesting to note that only Adam is said to have received his breath by God breathing it into him. Next, the animals were paraded before Adam so that he could try to find a suitable helper, one that would assist him with the tasks God had assigned him. During this process, he named the animals, demonstrating his authority over them. Not surprisingly, none of them turned out to be a suitable helper. So, in order to give Adam the helper he needed, God created the first woman, Eve, to be Adam's wife. But rather than creating her from the dust of the earth, God created Eve from Adam's rib. This made Eve unique among all the creatures God had made. As Adam said in Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, "She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man." The act of naming demonstrated Adam's authority over his wife. But the name he gave her, Isha in Hebrew, which we translate woman, sounded like Adam's own name, Ish, which we translate man. The equivalence of these names implied that while Eve was under Adam's authority in their marriage, she was equal to him in the tasks God had assigned them as a race. Both were created in God's image. Both were to fill and subdue the earth. And both were given authority to rule over creation on God's behalf.